One decision. That's all it took. In 1907, a young Adolf Hitler stood nervously before the gates of the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, his dreams of becoming an artist hanging by a thread. But what if the judges had seen potential in his work? What if they'd said yes? No Third Reich, no World War II, millions of lives spared, one stamp of approval, and history as we know it vanishes. This is the power of a single choice. The envelope trembled in Hitler's ink-stained hands. He tore it open, accepted. The judges had seen something in his brushstrokes, his compositions. Vienna's elite whispered about the brooding young artist with strangely intense eyes. By 1912, his paintings, dark, atmospheric cityscapes, lined galleries. Critics debated whether his work was genius or unsettling. War came anyway, but Hitler remained haunted by aesthetics, not ideology. He volunteered as a medic, sketching the wounded between battles. The trenches scarred him, but he poured it into canvas, not manifestos. By the 1920s, his name was known in Berlin salons. Some called him the painter of shadows. Without him, the far-right factions fractured. A different demagogue, perhaps, but no Holocaust, no blitzkrieg. Europe inched toward an uneasy peace, and in a small Munich studio, an aging artist dipped his brush, muttering about the decay of beauty to empty rooms. The world never feared his name. Then the letters started arriving. The first letter came unsigned. A rambling critique of Hitler's latest exhibition, accusing him of hiding from the truth in his sterile depictions of Vienna's alleyways. Then another slipped under his studio door. Your hands are too clean for a man who's seen war. Why won't you paint the fire? The handwriting grew increasingly erratic. By 1926, the notes were appearing weekly, always in the same blood-brown ink. At Café Central, his dealer, Liesel, frowned over the latest. They know things about the front lines no civilian should, specific battles. Names of dead soldiers. Hitler's throat tightened. He'd sketched those men, buried them. Liesel lowered her voice. There's talk of a new faction emerging in the beer halls. They idolize your uncompromising vision. Then came the parcel. Inside. A charcoal-smudged pamphlet titled The Artist's Duty, citing Hitler's own pre-war journal entries about purifying Europe's cultural decay. The margins swarmed with annotations in that same ink. You saw the sickness, one passage screamed. Why won't you cut it out? The breaking point arrived with the stranger at the gallery's winter opening, a gaunt man in an outdated infantry coat, eyes burning as he gripped Hitler's sleeve. They're waiting for you, he hissed. The men you abandoned in the mud. That night Hitler burned every sketch from the war, yet the letters kept coming. By spring, protests erupted outside his exhibits. Critics who once praised him now wrote of dangerous themes. When a Berlin newspaper ran his portrait beside the headline Art or Incitement, Liesel begged him to flee. They're not debating your paintings anymore, she warned. They're debating you. In the echoing dark of his studio, Hitler stared at a half-finished canvas, a self-portrait, his own face dissolving into black strokes. The brush trembled. Somewhere in the city, a crowd was chanting. The chanting grew louder, closer. Hitler flung open his studio window. Below, torchlight flickered across a sea of raised fists and feverish faces. Among them stood the gaunt stranger, now holding up a crude banner. Your art is our weapon. The crowd roared approval. Hitler recoiled, but his eyes locked onto the distorted versions of his own paintings, lifted high on makeshift poles, altered, twisted into grotesque propaganda. Liesel burst in, cheeks flushed with panic. They've taken your work to the streets. The police won't stop them. Some are joining. A rock shattered through the window, glass skittering across his unfinished self-portrait. The mob's cries unified into a single demand. Lead us! Hitler grabbed his last remaining sketchbook, fingers smearing the charcoal as he frantically scribbled not faces or streets but words. Manifesto, justification. The crowd's energy thrummed in his veins. The artist stepped onto the balcony, arms raised. Silence fell. For the first time in years, his hands didn't shake. Hitler's voice carried over the crowd, raw and jagged. You see the rot better than I ever painted it. The gaunt stranger grinned, pressing a knife into his hand. The same blade German soldiers had carried in the trenches. Torchlight flickered against the studio walls as the mob's fervor swelled. Behind him, the unfinished self-portrait seemed to sneer. Liesel whispered, "Run!" But the artist raised the knife, watching steel catch fire. The first cut wasn't on canvas.